We're back again with another episode of Faith with Pearl. My name is Pearl. Catch me here every Tuesdays on Lovatse Online Radio at 12 p.m. as we be touching on issues affecting the youth and ways to overcome them. Faith with Pearl is a show where we bring hope to the hopeless, shine light where there's darkness, and bring enlightenment to the youth. To make a quick recap on where I left you last week, we dived deep into this topic of the mind. Bangwe ba rena re ntse re ipotsa gore go tla wa jang ga go te motho o latlhegetswe ke tlhaloganyo. But on last week's episode, we established that go latlhegelwa ke tlhaloganyo in short means to lose your direction. Simply put, go tewa go latlhegelwa ke tsela. Re ne rata gape ra araba potsa gore motho o latlhegelwa ke tlhaloganyo jang, and we even went further to talk about how we can regain our direction. I mean, how we can regain our minds. One other important thing to take home from last week's episode is the importance of forgiveness. Gore in as much as we're saying gore rona wa a generation and gore we're going to be known about self-love. Self-love also means loving yourself enough to forgive yourself. Self-love also means loving yourself enough to to free yourself from the grudges that you're holding against other people. If you missed last week's episode, go ahead and check it out. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another episode of Faith with Pearl. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about overcoming the war that is inside of us. From forgiving ourselves first and forgiving other people, the next thing that we need to do is to move on. But the truth is, we cannot win the war that is outside unless we have won the war that is inside of us. I mean, we cannot take on the world. We cannot go and do great things out there until we have won the war that we're fighting inside of ourselves. On today's episode, we're going to touch on issues concerning self-doubt. We're going to touch on issues concerning being double-minded. We're going to touch on issues concerning fear. Because all these things, doubt, being double-minded, and fear has killed many ideas. It has killed many dreams. Great businessmen and women, great minds have been lost as a result of these things. Being double-minded has crippled so many people's visions. The youth are perishing because all these things, the war that is inside of us, we need to overcome and win this war that is inside of us. Let us go for a very short break. After that, we're going to go straight into the topic, and we're going to bring to light all these issues, and as always, the solutions to all these problems.
Faith with Pearl, Tuesdays at 12.
Before we went on that short break, I mentioned that today we're going to be dealing with overcoming the war that is inside of us. For the moment we overcome the war that is inside of us, we have already won the war that is outside of us. What am I talking about? This war, remember that when we started this show, Faith with Pearl, we started with the issue of the mind. The mind has so much power to create. The mind has power to create the life that we want to see. But if the mind is corrupted, it creates a life of corruption. Yet if the mind is pure, it creates good things for us. So today, we're going to be dealing with one of the things that have corrupted our minds. One of the reasons why so many of our dreams have come crashing. We're going to be dealing with the reason why so many of our visions have crippled. So today I'm going to start off with being double-minded. We need to deal with this issue of being double-minded. Being double-minded ga re bua ka Setswana ke ha o utlwa motho a re kana pelo tsa me dipedi. Pelo tsa me dipedi ga ke itse re ke tlhophe eng ke tlogele eng ga ke itse re ke e kae ke ska kae pelo tsa me dipedi. E ka tswe se sepehela gongwe ga ke re pelo tsa me dipedi ga ke bona go bele dijo tse di monate ke di ratang ga pele ga me e ka tswe se sepe. But the moment this becomes my anthem, the moment ke nna ke beana say in my business ke nna ke re pelo tsa me dipedi ga ke itse re ke dire ena kana ke dire e. The moment this becomes my anthem, when I'm choosing my career before Gaya University, ke re pelo tsa me dipedi ga ke itse re ke tseye course e kana ke tseye. it becomes a problem. The moment it becomes a problem, and we need to deal with it immediately. Because being double-minded, you become so unstable in anything that you're doing. How because when we go to the Word of God says a person who's double-minded is unstable in all his ways. So the root cause, many of the problems that we're facing are mind problems. I wonder, once we overcome being double-minded, once we overcome it means nothing, absolutely nothing is impossible for us to do. So the reason why great businessmen and women today are nowhere to be found, the reason why dreams have come crashing, the reason why I can do this business, I can become a doctor, she says something that is completely different, or they have settled for less than the vision that God has showed them, is because of these issues. It's because of doubt. It's because of being double-minded. It's because of fear. This is the very same reason why so many of the youth are confused today. So today, like I said, we're going to be dealing with these issues. We need to overcome the war that is inside of us first before we can go out and overcome the war that is outside there. So what I'm simply trying to say is that the enemy of our progress has been being double-minded. One of the enemies when it comes to business, when it comes to serious things, business, when it comes to your career, this thing is an enemy of progress, because God will give you a very beautiful idea, and then all of a sudden, you become confused. So we need to recognize that being double-minded has been the reason why so many of us have been backsliding. And with that being said, we're going to go for a very short break again, and then after that, I'm going to reveal again what else has been the enemy of our progress. What else has been stopping us from moving on? What else has been stopping us from overcoming the war that is outside?
Online radio.
We're back again, still on this topic of overcoming the war that is inside of us before we can go and overcome the war that is outside. Before we went on this short break that we're coming from, we mentioned one of the things that we need to deal with is being double-minded. We need to deal with it because this is one of the enemies of progress. It's one of the things that we need to overcome inside of us before we can go out there and overcome the world. And the reason why Kiriana is because once a person is double-minded, once already that person is defeated because they're confused. That being double-minded gives birth to confusion. You won't know, should I do this business? You end up being confused. You won't know, should I choose this career? Should I choose that one? You end up being confused, not knowing what to do. So this is one of the enemies that we need to overcome. The other two enemies that we need to overcome is fear and doubt. Fear is one of the things many of us were struggling with. Most of the youth are struggling with fear. Most of us God will glorify himself through me. Many of us were struggling with fear. And fear is the reason why, like I said, like I've mentioned, why many of our dreams have crashed. It's the reason why have great ideas, have not executed them. It's the reason why so many people even go to the grave with those ideas because they were afraid of taking charge of the opportunity, making the most of the opportunities that came. So fear cripples us, and doubt, is one of the things that we need to overcome. Before we can take on the world, we need to deal with fear. We need to deal with the doubt. We need to deal with being double-minded. So when we go to the Word of God again, today I'm going to make reference to what God is saying. God says to each and every single one of us that He did not give us a spirit of fear. He did not give us a spirit of timidity, that is of fear, but He gave us a spirit of love, of authority, and of self-control. So we need to understand in every space that we enter into, be it kotirong, be it at school, in every space that you enter into, do not enter with fear. Do not enter with doubt, because God gave us a spirit of authority. He gave us a spirit of self-control. He gave us a spirit of of love, not self-love, of love. So when you know your goal and when you know where you are going, you will not be intimidated. You will not fear. You will not fear what is ahead of you. And remember, this is to encourage you. God did not give you a spirit of fear. God did not give you fear. He gave you authority. When you enter into spaces, be it in an organization that you may be in, be it at school, be it at university, be it in any space that God has planted you in, remember that God did not give you a spirit of fear, but He gave you a spirit of authority. He gave you a spirit of love, and He gave you a spirit of self-control. So with all that God has given us, we cannot afford to accommodate fear. With all the dreams that God has shown us, with all the visions, with all the ideas that God has given us, we cannot afford to accommodate doubt and fear. We cannot afford the reason why we introduced this topic, let our minds be renewed, is because all along, we've been accommodating fear. We've been accommodating doubt. We've been accommodating being double-minded. But our minds need to be renewed. Our minds need to be renewed to understand fear is not our friend. Doubt is not our friend. What we need to accommodate is the authority that God has given us. What we need to accommodate is the self-control that God has given us, is the love that God has given us. And we've been failing, we've been confused to take on the world. We've been failing to take our positions. We've been failing to choose wisely or to choose the right things because of all these things. Because of this fear, is the one that is crippling us. Because of this doubt, this is the reason for my downfall. But like I said, today we're bringing to light all these things that have been our downfall. And we're going to look into the solutions to all these problems. We're going to look into the solutions to all these problems. Remember, when we introduced this topic of the mind, we said, let our minds be renewed. And do not forget, there's power in your mind. There's power in your mind to create the life that you want to see, to create the life that God has planted in you. And fear is the reason why anything good coming out of our lives. Doubt is the reason why we've been failing to reach our goals. We've been failing to reach our dreams. Being double-minded is the reason why. But we need to move on. Remember, we introduced the topic of the mind. This is what the mind can do. The mind has power to create. And we said that we need to forgive ourselves. We need to forgive other people. And we need to move on. But how do we move on? We move on first by overcoming this war that is inside of us. We move on first by overcoming doubt. We move on first by overcoming fear. We move on first by overcoming self-doubt, by overcoming low self-esteem, negative self-talk. We move on by overcoming all those things. We need to overcome the war that is inside of us first before we can go outside and overcome the world. Once we've overcome fear, once we overcome once we overcome once we overcome that, then nothing is impossible for us. When we make up our minds, I'm going to do this business, you're going to do it. When you make up your mind, I'm choosing this career, you're going to choose it. And you're going to see the results of it. But many of us, the reason why we move on is because of this doubt, is because of this fear, is because of being double-minded. But with all these things, and after exposing all these things that have been stopping us from moving on, let us then talk about the solutions to all these things. As always, like I said, Faith with Pearl is here to enlighten. It's here to bring hope to the hopeless. It's here to shine light where there's darkness. We're going to go for a short break. And then after that, we're going to come back and look into the solutions to all these problems. Now that we've seen, this is the war that has been happening inside of us. Now that we've seen how do we overcome this war that is inside of us so that we can go and defeat the war that is outside? So we're going to go for a very short break, and then after that we're going to look into the solution to this problem. We're going to look into the solution to this problem. We're going to see I'm going to shine light, and we're going to see how then do we overcome the war that is inside of us.
Lobatse Online Radio.
This time around we go hard.
Hi, I'm Brighton from Sound Emotion.
Hi, I'm Tech 16.
Hey, I'm Leora.
Ingrid.
Baby Audio.
What's up, dude? Boombox on a beat.
You are tuned into
Lobatse Online Radio, where talent lives.
Before we went on that short break, I promised that after the break, we're going to talk about how to overcome the war that is inside of us. We already established we cannot go anywhere if we still have doubt, if we're still accommodating being double-minded, if we're still accommodating fear. We cannot move on, we cannot do great things. There's no how we can actually move on and begin to do wonderful and great things unless we've overcome the war that is inside of us. But Pearl, how do I overcome the war that is inside of me? The first thing that we need to do is to let our minds and our heart agree. Every time when doubt creeps in, every time pause and make a decision. Okay, fine. But I need to decide I'm choosing this and stick to it. Some people call it a dilemma. Some will say, I have a dilemma. The moment that creeps in, the moment that comes, pause and make a decision. Make that decision. Ask yourself, what does God say about me? This is how we're dealing with doubt. What does God say about me? Some people have been given great skills. Some people are talented. But doubt when doubt comes, ask yourself, what does God say about me? This is the question that we need to ask ourselves every time when doubt comes. What does God say about me? What does God say about me? Some of us were suffering with befriending emotions that are not ours. And I'm talking about fear. Some of us were struggling with fear. The moment fear comes in, ask yourself, what does God say about the situation? Remember that the God that we serve, the great I Am, cannot fail. So if the God that you serve cannot fail, means that you too cannot fail. Another thing that we need to do after deciding my mind and my heart need to agree is to recognize the gifts that God has given you. So many of us were gifted. So many of us have been gifted. Some are good farmers. Some they are very good at drawing. Some are very good at singing. Recognize the gift that God has given you and believe that the God who has given you that gift is the one who is able and he is capable of making that gift grow. So we deal with doubt by recognizing this gift, I've been given this gift by God. So the God who has given me this gift is more than able to enable me to succeed, to enable me to shine in this gift. Some of us have been given, for example, there are people that are gifted in cooking. Do not doubt if the idea of coming with a catering business comes up. If God gives you an idea, okay, fine, go and start catering. Do not doubt. Whenever doubt comes, pause and say, but God gave me this gift. Pause and ask yourself, what does God say? God says that he did not give me a spirit of timidity, but he gave me a spirit of authority. Some people are gifted at running businesses. When an idea comes, do not doubt. When doubt comes, you cannot run that business. Remember, God gave you that gift of running businesses. So pause and ask yourself, what does God say? What does God say? He says, I have not given you a spirit of fear, but I've given you a spirit of authority. So the God that you serve, understand that the God that you serve cannot fail. So if the God that you serve cannot fail, it means that you too cannot fail. So the solutions to all these things, the solution to being double-minded is to allow your mind and your heart to agree. Whatever your mind conceives, may your heart agree with it. The solution to doubt is to pause. Every time when doubt comes, pause and ask yourself, what does God say about this situation? What does God say about me? What does God say about me? And the solution to fear is to all the time recognize the gift that God has given you. And whenever fear comes, pause and say, but this gift is from God. So if it is from God, the God who has given me this gift is the one who is able to help me to overcome every challenge that may come on my way. So with that being said, and in conclusion, I want to say, in order for us to overcome the war that is outside, we need to overcome the war that is inside of us. We cannot go and do great things without overcoming the war that is inside of us first. The war that is inside of us, we overcome it by allowing our heart and our mind to agree. We overcome the war that is inside of us by deciding, I'm going to go with God, with what God says about me. We overcome the war that is inside of us first before we can go outside and overcome the war that is outside. So that is all for today's episode. Don't forget that this program is called Faith with Pearl. It will be coming to you every Tuesdays here on Lobatse Online Radio. My name is Pearl. Let's meet again next week Tuesday at the same time and at the same place. And remember that in all situations that you may be going through, Ulamanana, our God is the great I Am who has overcome the world, and He is with you.
Faith with Pearl, Tuesdays at 12.
Find us on all social media platforms: Facebook, Lobatse Online Radio; Twitter @Lobatse Online Radio; YouTube @Lobatse Online Radio, or email us on lobatseonlineradio@gmail.com.